Anis, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Just a second.
Well, we are ahead of schedule, so maybe that's my mistake. So,
No.
Anis, take your time, but we can see your presentation.
No problem.
Now. Thank you.
No problem. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this online interactive seminar. Thanks to Fontys University and Yadra for hosting this beautiful event. I will speak on the topic of VR application is post-COVID arts and education. So I want briefly to go to the table of contents. We begin with a famous name, both in arts and sciences, that is Myron Kruger, who envisioned and defined the technology today we all know as virtual reality. Then we will see how this new idea and concept found a fertile ground within the art community and eventually was transformed into a new medium. Further, we will describe different typologies of alternate realities which this new technology can offer by the various modalities in which it can be both approached by developers, artists, and users. We will also make a comparison of the cutting-edge VR equipment on the market and see the competitive landscape of various industries and applications. Try to understand the link between the COVID pandemic and the re-emergence or reawakening of virtual reality. And last but not least, we will explore various applications of VR available as online tools or platforms for collaboration at a distance with the main focus in arts and education. So I will begin the first part with a quote by Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus Rift, now part of Metaverse. VR is a way to escape the real world into something more fantastic. It eventually has the potential to be the most social technology of all time. The concept of virtual reality, it's broad and complex with the purpose to simulate environment, a photorealistic environment through the use of electronic technologies to the point of making the user to feel completely immersed within the synthetic created world. Virtual reality and its counterpart, augmented reality, among the various multimedia technologies which are available today, are the closest forms of art and creativity using computer science. Kruger is considered one of the first generation researchers in virtual reality and augmented reality, thanks to his first experimental works, among which the video space is the most popular one. Of particular interest was his artistic vision of what would be then called, what I mentioned before, a synthetic replica of the real world, vision rooted to the technological implications and the multiple possibilities of use or multiple modes of usage of this technology. He paid particularly attention to the immersion, which consisted in involving all senses and body movements of the users. Used in his prototype computer were projected on the walls with video projector where images generated by the computer, while facial expressions and body movement gestures were tracked by cameras and sensors placed over the body of the user. For Kruger, the interactive artistic element made possible by the multiple artificial and virtual realities assumed a fundamental role through the system he called a video space. This was essentially his dream, where he wanted to create an artificial reality that wasn't bulky. I didn't ask the user to wear any special dedicated hardware, or at least to minimize the pre-requirements for the interaction in the virtual world. The video space is considered as an environmental digital space, as the digital system perceives the actions of the user and everything is distributed within this environment without, as I said before, the necessity of verbal technology. According to the artist, the alternative to video plays is eventually to wear goggles and sensors, which at that time were considered to be very bulky and expensive. This seemed a deep bond between art and virtual reality. The reasons for this link are to be found in the very nature of the technologies applied to virtual simulation, because they are born generally within the field of computer graphics. Mainly, the computer operates with two-dimensional graphics, and the virtual reality eventually is the introduction to the third dimension in the computer graphics. This illustration displays the video plays by Kruger, where we have the participant interacting with the virtual environment, which is projected on a wall, and a camera is tracking her or his movement. All is sent back to the computer, where is assembled and coordinated in a real time, known as a human-computer interaction or user interaction with the virtual world. VR as an aesthetic medium. Chris Malk, the founder of Verse, will say that VR is not a new medium. It's an unwritten canvas, eventually, where people can figure out what the story looks like and an audience can see if they like it. And it's a really unique time to experience this kind of communication and interaction, thanks to the new medium known as virtual reality. The virtual environments are increasingly seen and considered as an aesthetic means, sort of alternative to the common static images, not as much as only a form of communication, but also as a medium or means of communication. So an alternative there will be provided by the virtual reality, which allow art to have more ways to be delivered, created, and shared among users. The juxtaposition eventually of these two graphical representations, the classic one with static images and more recent one with the representation of the 3D interactive environments, can be defined as dynamic or stochastic because it involves computer technology, which is offering interaction between the art and the viewer. Consequentially, another typology can also be done, which considers between a passive art and an active art, where VR falls into the second category. And here we can go further in different typologies and classifications of types of viewers: passive viewers, active viewers, synchronous, asynchronous, etc. What makes art active? Actually, it's the immersion of the user in the virtual world through the aesthetic means of the artificial reality. It's dynamic because we have the perception, the visualization, and the control system that eventually will receive information and data on the user behavior and apply this to the changing virtual environment. All this means that an artist can intervene between the user input and the system response. For example, a movement of an individual can generate sounds, or it can be the user voice itself that is used to navigate the virtual environment. And here we can imagine all possible application in the field of assistive technology as well for disabled users. VR is interesting as means both for art and education because it represents an entity that implies a dialogue of users and the system. And it is a personal augmenter or amplifier, and both in the same new virtual shared space where participants have this possibility to explore, interact with what is generated by the computer. These virtual environments, unlike the static images, can lose eventually little from the concept of work on art. So it's more accurate to define it as a digital art or some form of experimental art that will make use of computer technology. Which are the different typologies of virtual reality? Zuckerberg states that the incredible thing about the technology is that you feel like you're actually present in another place with other people. People who try say it's different from anything they have experienced in their lives before. Here again, the focus is on immersion. And we haven't reached full immersion so far, because full immersion will mean incorporating all senses within the human-computer interaction, starting from the visual one, which is main because it's most used by human beings, and then going to hearing, voice, smell, taste, touch, etc. The virtual reality or augmented reality, as its variation, consists of an imaginary environment where the human subject has the possibility to interact with virtual objects. The immersion would almost never be complete, as I said, as some of the human senses eventually will be left out of the interaction, and they will trigger again the connection with the real world. A first tangible difference between the virtual reality and the augmented reality is the possibility of using the surrounding environment, more precisely in the first case of AR. The subject who is exploiting the virtual world has the possibility to know what surrounds her or him. And here we have special application in the medical field or the military technology where this is crucial. Virtual objects and real objects can coexist in the same time and in the same place. This figure shows the virtual reality continuum, where augmented reality is one part that makes up the what we call mixed reality. The portion of the graph between virtual environment or virtual reality and augmented reality consists of an area of the figure where real objects are associated with virtual objects, completely replacing the surrounding or the real physical environment with imaginary one. The display device, when we talk about pure VR, it's represented by head-mounted display or smart glasses, as shown on the figure on the left, while an alternative medium could be a holographic display, stereoscopic monitor, projection on a wall, or other technology for representation of virtual objects. Both can eventually emphasize the immersion where the virtual reality on the left can have a higher degree of giving that sense of a presence into another space to the user. The image source can come from computer-generated graphic, which can be, again, imaginary graphic of an existing object or phenomena, like a fantasy world. Or we can have also a reconstruction of real-world environments and real-world objects with the help of computer graphics. While on the left, the augmented reality or the mixed reality will use as an image source both computer-generated graphics and real objects from the real-world environment. The environment in the VR, it's fully digital, while in the augmented reality or mixed reality represents kind of mix both of real and virtual objects. The perspective in AR and MR will make the virtual objects to adapt or react to the behavior of the user in the real world. And as we will see further, this is made possible thanks to different starting from head tracking sensors mounted on the HMD or the smart glasses, and other sensors like high resolution cameras, digital scanners, etc. On the right side, we have the virtual objects, which in the full VR will react to user perspective in the virtual world. And the best example of this are the video games in the entertainment industry, where we have three-dimensional interactive representation of our body called an avatar. And that avatar will mimic our behavior through the inputs we can give with various hardware devices. And we have therefore interaction between the virtual avatar and the virtual object. The presence in the VR is a sense of a full immersion into another world. While the presence in the AR or MR, it's both present in the real world with an awareness of additional virtual objects or data present within it. AR and MR actually will implement VR just as an additional digital layer to the analog or physical world. The awareness in the augmented reality world will be where virtual objects can be identified according to their nature and behavior, while in the VR or the mixed reality, the perfect virtual object can be distinguished from a real one. The very first applications of augmented reality were introduced by Ivan Sutherland in Harvard University in late 60s, where he proposed the first prototype of an HDMI or head-mounted display. And he's equally relevant and necessary as Mark Kruger for the state of the VR technology we have today. A main difference can be found in the type of technologies used in AR application, where we'll talk more soon to see various implementations of it, among which a see-through or optical see-through HMD, which literally means that you can look through the technology in the real world, and the closed view HMD, which enables a full immersion and blocks any vision to the real world. And also a third implementation of it will be using a monitor for stereoscopic vision. This figure shows the conceptual diagram of the optical see-through HMD, sorry, where we have the optical combiners. These are the essential elements of this technology, which will partially block the light coming from the real world and also work as a mirror for the pictures projected by the monitors. The monitors will receive the images with the necessary frame rate by the scene generator, which as an input will take the head location of the user by the head tracker. The head tracker essentially will be a digital gyroscope or a digital compass, which will in real time give the value of the position of the head of the user in the 3D space. The second one is the see-through Asmd, where we have the closed view version. Instead of having the glass, which can allow you to look into the real world, you have a monitor, generally two monitors for both eyes, as the third dimension or the depth is a construct of two different images for both eyes, and a video cameras which will capture two pictures from the real world and reconstruct the environment into the virtual scene, which will combine also elements generated by the computer. This is Samsung Gear, which allows also, it was developed in partnership with Oculus, and it allows you to use your smartphone, where the images will be eventually divided. The screen will be divided in two parts, one for the left eye and the other for the right eye, from where we can have the stereoscopic vision or the illusion of the third dimension. And the third one is the monitor-based augmented reality, where we have a monitor for stereoscopic vision. Optionally, if the monitor doesn't have the possibility to project two separate images, we need to wear glasses which will filter the two images projected on the monitor, one for the right eye and the other for the left eye. Then we will have the tracker, which can use object recognition and pattern recognition in order to catch different behavior, essentially general movement of the head of the user, send it all back to the scene generator, where it will be combined together with the video of the real world and the graphic images generated by computer. State-of-the-art virtual technology. Nelson Gonzalez will argue that the next evolution of VR would be where you will participate physically in the virtual environment. In 2014, Facebook bought Oculus, and this seemed to have prompted the industry to produce and develop more VR and AR applications in a phase considered to be 1.0. In 2018, in the field of smart glasses, Microsoft, together with HoloLens, won a contract of $500 million to equip soldiers with augmented reality technology. And according to data from DigiCapital 2018, also Sony became a leader in the gaming market with virtual reality interface for its platform called PlayStation, surpassing all competitors such as HTC, Oculus, and Samsung. An alternative to AR or VR devices is a platform that has been very successful recently, and that is the mobile augmented reality. Apple, Facebook, and others have landed with proprietary application for AI development, special kits like ARKit and Spark AR respectively, while Google has relied on outsourcing technology with its AR core platform. And from some years now, many brands have been very big within the VR and AR markets, well known like Ford, Ferrari, Marvel, etc. This represents the competitive landscape of VR technologies. As I mentioned before, Facebook now within its metaverse has Oculus. Microsoft promotes the HoloLens, which are AR technology essentially. Google has few of them, the Google Cardboard concept, Magic Leap, John Glass project, etc. And everyday new startups are emerging within the VR landscape. So what changed in COVID, essentially? VR was there, and Chris Malk, the founder of Verse, will say that if you just look at the medium and what it's doing, we're basically broadcasting human senses to the consciousness and duplicating the user perception. So the COVID pandemics make the momentum for re-emergence or rebirth of these technologies, because it implied the necessity of being present in a virtual space in a more efficient and effective manner. Today, we can say that we live in another renaissance of virtual reality, as there were many before. Finally, VR is on the rise thanks to the new headsets, more accessible, both in economical and other terms, improved software and hardware. The pandemic had a strong impact on the use and the implementations of these new technologies and tools in all work and in different personal environments. Already existing immersive technologies that struggled to find any use and public acceptance have finally found a fertile ground. Virtual reality devices during the first period of COVID were practically unavailable, and now augmented reality apps are in an exponential growth. So there is actually also a lack of supply of the demand within the VR industry. When we work today from a single place in our home, generally, the greatest limitation of VR before is very clear, that we simply didn't need it. And as with all of other technological revolution, the necessity is mother of invention. So we must have this urgency where we were eventually forced to use what was sleeping for several decades. Our life was already satisfying eventually in the real, and we didn't need another replica of the world or another alternative reality before the emergence of the COVID pandemics. The founder of HTC Vive will say that there are as many applications for VR as you can think of. It's just restricted by your imagination. Artificial realities, as Kruger defined them, more in general, virtual reality and augmented reality will find application in different fields of everyday life under various typologies, names, and with various types of wearable and non-wearable devices, but also systems that do not necessarily imply any movement on the part of the user. This device is developed by NeuroSky, pioneering technology for brain interface with computing. Is essentially a portable EEG, which can be paired with via head-mounted display of any kind, communicate through the Bluetooth, and it can help the user to take part within the virtual world and interact with various virtual objects within it, just with his thoughts. Till now, you can capture up to 8 thoughts or concepts roughly. It must be first statistically modeled by big data and then recalled eventually as a response of your brain activities to a certain virtual object and phenomena in order to manipulate it. Plus, it can track your focus, awareness, etc. So again, it's a very promising technology which can help both artists, educators to develop new styles of expression, communication, and interaction within the virtual environments. Kruger, in this regard, makes interesting reflection on the presence of VR in future schools. And generally in schools, we have 2 types of students, of which the teacher is aware. The student which is considered to be hyperactive and who needs to give eventually a vent to all his vitality in a constructive way, and the passive student who needs to be actively involved in the learning process. VR combined with brain interfaces can emphasize the interaction between teachers and students, but also in the middle, you can here see the role of the artist, which can eventually bring us to the next level of educational methodology, where the goal is significantly to contribute to teaching by improving the teaching-learning interaction and making the actors more connected with the environment, more engaging and more collaborative through the creation of realistic virtual spaces and encouraging immersion of on the part of the students and the teachers. Virtual reality here eventually will not just serve to explain facts, concepts, ideas, but rather to give a personalized package of new experience to the student in such a way that she or he will discover the rules by herself or himself. And these rules, we know that are not finite, but they are changeable in the way that in certain moment, first they are correct, but a moment later, they may not be true anymore. And all this is based on the fact that learning is a continuous and never-ending process. Today, we live in the age where technology is transforming us as humans, is accelerating our evolution. This could assume that even art may have undergone eventual changes, and it will both embrace and define these new emerging technologies. as we can see by the example of Meyer Kruger himself, the father of VR. Both science and art cannot exist separately in the new virtual reality. Augmented reality can be considered also as a digital magnifying glass that will allow its users to benefit in a different way from education, work, entertainment, very often using a device that we all have in everyday life, such as smartphone or tablet, including tools adopted on a daily basis to make us more frequent visitors in the virtual worlds. Now, I would like to share several VR experiences for arts and education. The first is the famous Smithsonian Institution, which gives the possibility to the user to have a virtual tour throughout one of the many museums. Probably I must refresh.
And just let me remind you in the meantime that time is slowly running out. So
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, great. So now here we recall the picture where we have computer generated graphics, although these are images which will eventually replicate the real world. They're generated by a computer because they were captured before and now they're processed into a virtual environment where the user can interact. And this can offer you the possibility to have the stereoscopic vision, which I mentioned before, to separate images for both eyes, which will give the user the illusion for the third dimension, and therefore will enhance the feeling of immersion within the environment. The other it's modification of or a variant of virtual reality, where we have both images from the real world generated by a computer as a virtual environment for navigation, and then a map, which is an overlay virtual object, and in this case helps as a navigation. This can be approached in the same time as an educational virtual space and an artistic one. I choose to represent it as an example in the post-COVID VR applications, because the main barrier and problem that emerged in the pandemic was especially the possibility to visit these spaces in the real world. Okay, I can skip this. I just shared it in the slides because what's different between the Smithsonian application for VR and VR All Art. VR All Art is a platform rather than product, and eventually it's marketplace for artists, galleries, museums, and you can see there are many virtual spaces created from various art curators and institutions around the world using this platform. And the third one, it's a platform where digital artists can bring their static art to life using virtual reality, especially augmented reality, enabling visitors to the galleries in the offline world to explore art in a more interactive way, and making it more engaging and educational, enabling the user to take part in the process of the generating of the art itself. So users who will eventually visit the virtual museum or will visit a physical museum with the help of augmented reality as a second digital layer to it, will contribute to the creation of the masterpiece together with the artist. Okay, so that was all. Thank you for your attention. Stay safe, stay augmented. These are some credits and references which I want to share with all of you. And thanks again to Pontus University and Yadro for giving me this possibility to share knowledge with you.
Thank you, Hannes, for your presentation. I thought I already knew some things about VR and AR, but I did learn a lot today, and I hope that counts for all of you. There's time for a few questions and answers, so if anybody has a question, feel free to make use of Hannes' presence, raise your hand and ask your question.
Yes, I have a question. If Anis is involved or worked in the past in artistic project where the performer or the audience use the VR technology. I saw some project in a museum, one from, for example, one artistic project by Bjork. But now I want to ask if you are working in artistic project with this technology.
Thank you very much for your question, dear Alessandra. I was involved in two projects. One is finished. If I have time available, I will share it now. I will just leave it in the chat area so you can check it. It was construction of virtual gallery, immersive virtual reality for a Macedonian local artist. I did that project within the University of Udine in Italy, actually, as a student, using VRML, which is virtual reality modeling language. At that time, it was still as a technology proposition to the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C. Now it's accepted as a standard within the HTML5. It's WebGL, which is the international standard for distributed virtual reality online. So essentially, you can visit the gallery both with the web browser, as I showed before the example of the Smithsonian Institute, and you can use also a head-mounted display to navigate. And the second project is an undergoing one within the University of Information Technology and Science and Apostol Paul of Ohrid, where I work currently. And it will use augmented reality to give an extra information in a museum of computer science. So we're going to display the old CPUs, processors, starting from the vacuum tubes of IBM of the year 50s and 60s. And then the VIA can eventually help you to find where this part of touch was designed, where it was operating in the old mainframe computers. As in my country, we don't have replicas or examples of this pioneering computer technology. So we are combining exhibition of separate parts we can find on auction, buy them, and then reconstruct the rest of the mainframe computer with virtual reality. So I will, once it's announced, also share this project with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, this sounds really cool. I saw that Yasmina wanted to ask something, and after that, Jan, but first Yasmina.
Thank you, Anis, for the beautiful presentation. And what I would like to you to share with the audience here is what intrigued me most through our preparatory meeting, some of the projects that you mentioned that you are developing currently in your institute in Ohrid. And one of these is including involvement of the sense of smell more into the augmented and virtual reality experience. So can you, I mean, I still have, I mean, it's so abstract, I still am trying to wrap my head around that and the implication of this on the arts, because we so far we mainly rely on the when we talk about online presence and using the technology in arts, we mainly rely on the sense of vision and hearing, but not that much on the tactile, and especially not the smell and taste. So please share some of your current researches, and how do you also envision that, let's say, mainstreamed and applied in arts as well?
Thank you very much. This is eventually a concept. I will try now to show part of it, which has a display where it will be used for a stereoscopic vision as a head-mounted display. It will generate two separate images to be projected on both eyes. So in back, we will have a camera which can enable also applications of augmented reality. And we have a cluster or array of digital sensors for smell. For them, they're essentially capturing various molecules and then sending to the embedded computer inside. Actually, inside there is a Raspberry Pi platform. In the same way, it has, the first version is 16-bit, so it has 16 different micro servos which can help to make the appropriate mix for the profile of the smell we want to generate. So with this, we can give an extra dimension or layer to the VR application and enhance even more the immersion of the user by enabling her or him within the VR or AR world to both eventually augment the smells, give smell to the virtual objects, and with that we recall the according Kruger, the what is there for essential to grasp the nature of the virtual object is to interpret it by its behavior, and the objects which have odor are eventually identified through their odor. Their essence comes from their odor or their smell. So imagine within the cinema arts or gaming industry, you can develop also a fantasy world with eventually a combination of smells which we cannot all find and recall in real world. So this experimental project so far, as I said, it should eventually use again the standard protocols enabled by the World Wide Web Consortium and give possibility to artists, educators, and other developers to create their own virtual worlds. They can be also solely based on the smell or a combination as a multimedia application, both of vision, smell, test. In addition to this, I want to mention I'm not the only one who is making the research. There is one more famous than mine, known as the eNose of before. And there is also the concept of the digital lollipop, which is an interface for generating taste within mouth by electrode. We first must find a way to make these new technologies more socially inclusive in order to be accepted and economically available, so we can have better and more accelerated research in future. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jan, did you still want to ask a question?
Yeah, just a very short question. Thanks very much for this presentation. I was wondering, also going to the smell, you were talking about, well, this full emergence, we don't actually have it at this point. I was wondering, isn't it more exciting to have a connection between the virtual world and, let's say, the physical world that we're living in, than having actual everything within this virtual world? So I was wondering, is the fact that it is not full emergence at this point, so that we still use our senses in the physical world also while entering the virtual world, I think it's very exciting, and I would miss it. But I was wondering, what's your point of view?
Yeah. Thank you very much, dear Jan. Actually, this can be also seen as a preference and both as a necessity. It, according to me, depends on the application and use case scenario. I'm somehow in line with also your view and your thoughts. We had before a short talk with Yasmina and Mike on the same topic, and we should left open the door for different views and approaches. However, the augmentation of what is already there, it's the so-called middle path, and possibly the longest one, the most difficult, but also the most promising one, because it neither negates what we have done till now, and it involves our past experience with what is waiting to be yet discovered. And as with all other technologies, we have the hardcore approach where we want to synthesize everything, and then we have the other more balanced approach, as you mentioned, where we want eventually to amplify the analog with the digital. Here I'm with you, but we should also not forget that, for example, Kruger himself was kind of more radical in the view of VR, and those ideas can also help us boost the research and development. Then it all comes to applications. One more thing, when we talk about art and science, we should always think also of the practical implications of all these innovations, and think for a while of the assistive technology and what all these immersive VR tools and environments can offer to disabled people. What we take for granted as everyday experience is something unreachable for some users. So the brain interface together with the smell technology can help the disabled users to have everyday walk on the field of, let's say, of roses, which other people take for granted. So we also must both work hand in hand, not only with academy, but also with industry of possible practical applications. And from there, we can have the right directions where to proceed. Thank you very much, Jan.
Okay, thank you. We are running a bit out of time, but I for sure see a question of Boris.
Can answer the rest of the questions maybe in chat, as you prefer.
Boris has been waiting, so I would say we give Boris the floor and keep it
short.
Yes,
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. This is a very simple question. I had a chance to experience both virtual and augmented reality at some point. Each of those has its own set of strengths, if I can say. And my question to Professor Anis is, from a business perspective, which technology do you predict will win in the end, virtual or augmented reality, or maybe it will be mixed?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Boris. So I believe that the mixed reality will eventually win at the end, because as Professor Jan pointed out, people don't want just to replace things, but they want to upgrade things. And it is the same with our experiences. We don't want to leave our old experience, and in the same time, we want to have something new, to gain new experiences. So eventually, AR or MR can help us to embrace the new worlds without eventually turning the back to the old one. And it's the same struggle with the business industry. When you want to make any business process innovation, you have always the opposition and then the innovation front. So I see AR here as a reconciliation point where we can have a continuum of multiple states of or versions or modalities of realities.
Thank you so much, Anis, for the presentation and also the nice discussion. I can see there's more to discuss, but let's do that at the end of all presentations if there are still questions. Thank you so much. Now we continue with something very different. We have Alessandro Olla and Ivana Balavanova here. They are going to tell you about their artistic collaboration. Alessandro Olla, if you can already see from the environment he is in, is a composer, pianist, and performer. He teaches as well. He is using experimentation, improvisation, and electronics, both in music composition and on the stage. His personal research is focused mainly on the interaction of music with other artistic expressions. Among his interests are also video art and dancing. That's where Ivana comes in. Ivana Balabanova is a Macedonian dancer and choreographer. She studied contemporary dance at the Academy for Contemporary Dance, which is part of the University of Goce Delchev in Stip. But she also masters urban dance and knows the basics of classical ballet. And she has won numerous international awards, both as a dancer and for her choreographies. Alessandro and Ivana have been working together on several projects, and I'm really curious to learn more about them. So go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Maike, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you, Anis, for your amazing presentation. It definitely arose interest to me concerning what we are working on with Alessandro at the moment. So I'm truly thankful to Center Yadro and Maike for allowing us to speak a little bit about our work. And we were invited here, as Maike said, to discuss a little bit about our latest works that we are developing at the moment, which are called Darkness and the Ritual Project, that we started developing last summer in Barcelona, where basically Alessandro introduced me to new possibilities of implementing technology that is related to both audio and visuals when developing an artistic piece. Alessandro will talk a little bit more about the philosophical aspect of the creation itself, and also about the practical usage of technology, which he's more like capable of talking about. Whereas I would just begin by sharing a little bit of my history in creating art with technology. So my interest in audiovisual projects and multimedia began in 2018 when I was working on one performance called Silence, which was a multimedia piece, a choreography play for raising awareness against domestic violence. At that time, I was not really introduced to a lot of technology usage in art, and also our resources were modest, so we were using just a basic projection of video, live projection. Basically, we had one camera at the top of the hall at the National Opera and Ballet, and we were dancing on the floor on beds. So the camera was capturing the whole movement from above, and the audience was able to see us on the stage dancing on the beds, but also to see the whole projection behind us, and to see the whole movement in the choreography from above as it was filmed at the moment. And then that like love for audiovisual implementation when creating continued with when I was developing the piece Ether, which I developed here with two dear professors for also contemporary music and contemporary dance. It was basically a project that we organized at the Youth Cultural Center, where we engaged the audience into the creation of music and also into the usage of space. And we used video to film the audience and to project the things that we film with the audience in real time to see, so that it can be seen from the other part of the audience. So that was only a modest like introduction for me into usage of technology. But to be fairly honest, when I was really introduced to real implementation of new possibilities when I started working with Alessandro in Barcelona. So basically, we started together working on the piece Her Own Space, which was not involving technology, but we somehow knew that our aesthetics, I knew at the moment that our aesthetics work well and that we have similar sensibility. So we continued our collaboration. So that last summer we started the residency in Barcelona. The thing is that I have always wanted to combine voice, talking or singing, and movement, as well as visuals, projection or audiovisual elements. So he introduced me to the possibilities of recording the voice and real-time mixing, body percussion and amplification of the body sounds, from which aroused the idea for us to create the Darkness project. I will, before I start talking about the projects themselves and the residency and how it affected me as a performer, I would just like to state that it is very interesting how technology and creativity works together in terms of how one could inspire the philosophical and the creative aspects of the performer and the creator when developing something together. And while Anis was talking, something that really caught my attention is the quote from that guy, Chris Milk, which said, I will quote it again, "We are broadcasting human senses to your consciousness and we are duplicating perception." It really caught me my interest because one of the things that we started working on with Alessandro at the Ritual project was basically a possibility to have the performer using smart glasses while creating the performance itself on stage, so that the audience can see the movement without the augmented reality in real time, and also to be able to see on screen the second version, which is basically what the performer sees through the smart glasses, and how that movement works with the augmented reality. We will talk more later about the pieces themselves, but I will let first Alessandro introduce himself and share something about the technological aspects of the whole work we did.
Okay, Vanna. I was sharing the screen, but I don't know if we work with a short movies from last summer. And good evening again, and a lot of thanks to Jasmina and Central Cultural Center Jadro. And I think this kind of meeting is very important as an opportunity to share our works, to share experience, ideas, and create a network. And I am a sound artist and a performer. I teach composition, electroacoustic composition in Cagliari Conservatorio or Music Conservatory in Sardinia, Italy, but I live in Barcelona. My personal research is split in two ways: the soundscape and the new technologies applied at the art. And now I'm working in different multimedia projects that involve video, theater, dance, and sound. And I and Ivana, we have started working without knowing each other in presence, just a virtual contact. We started to work during the lockdown. Ivana sent me a video, and I work with a composition, with idea, and sending again to her my music. And until last summer, we met in Skopje, and after in Barcelona in the last August. Our desire is create, we want to create a new artistic project, new performance, exploring a new possibility to interaction with new technologies and art. And after some days working in a land where everything is possible, we work on shooting videos in the street, inside my studio. And after some days, we focused our interest in two ways: the ritual and the potential of the dark. But now I talk just about the darkness project. We have choose the dark because it's possible looking for how sculpt the light, the possibility of intimacy, the possibility to explore the unknown, the fear, the inner silence. We have a lot of possibility to dig to exploration some themes. We want to explore the border between light and dark, the half shadow, what happened in this interzone, what are the possibilities. We find uncertainty, seeing and not seeing, intuiting what happens. The project aims to explore the physical and the psychic sensation that arise when you stay in the dark. But we have started to work in this in different direction, and when you use the new technologies, the interaction with the Kinect, with the sensors, there is for me a big danger, like a trap. The danger of technology is that the interaction is often empty of content, empty of subjects, empty of concepts. The trap is that the interaction creates a show, funny show, but often a show like a circus, like a playground. For example, you move your arm and the Kinect take your movement and transform with a parameter, and you move your arm and you listen to, for example, a wind. You move your eyes and listen to the birds, or you move your leg and a filter start to change your sound. You move a hand and start a glissando or other effect. It's very funny, but it's a performance for me, a performance to smiling, to laughing, and this is a danger territory when you don't use a strong philosophy, a strong concept inside this interaction. It's very easy to go in a trivial, banal situation. In my point of view, in my opinion, often the aesthetic of electronic device, the aesthetic of the software cancel the content, the matter inside, the topic, and takes power of the project. And I want to share this this point of view about new technologies, and it's all.
Yes, well, as Alessandro stated, so our residence in Barcelona rests on two pillars, one of which is the usage of technology as a basis for creation. And the second one is the philosophical aspect of any creation, that we believe it needs to be implemented when creating something. So these two continually intertwine evoking creativity in the symbiosis of their existence. And before Barcelona, I couldn't really say that I had this type of mentor here, that nobody really worked with me on developing a solo piece, my own work. And he's a great pedagogue who actually indulged me into the new possibilities and introduced me to how to actually dive deeper when creating something. So after Anis was speaking, and from what we spoke with Alessandro, I just would like to just pop up this question to everyone, like, for what is the purpose of this whole thing in technology? I mean, what is the purpose of VR? What is the purpose of art itself? What is the philosophical aspect maybe when creating all of these things together, and how they can work in nice symbiosis to create like a bigger value or bigger meaning for the audience and for the broader audience, not only for the one that is actually participating at a particular show. I will just share now some more information about the projects and the residency. So how it actually came to the idea for us to use that technology. At the beginning, me and Alessandro, we just started playing, like experiencing and trying to work with different exercises, different opportunities to just get to know each other and to understand how each one of us thinks and what we are interested in, what topics are we interested in. So then he would give me the microphone and ask me to record sounds. Then at the same time, while I was creating the sounds, he would use a real-time recorder and try to mix all those sounds and created a whole composition at the same moment, which completely changed the whole experience for me and what I was doing. Later, he would ask me to improvise or either on the sound actually that I was using at the moment or on no sound at all. And we played with that at the beginning. What I can share and what I would like to just share into this in terms of what we're speaking about tonight is how the technology affected me as a performer and how it's changed my perspective on how to do things and how to think about things. As a dancer, most of our work focuses on improvisation and on experimenting with our body and with different types of concepts. And I could just share that at the moment that we started using the technology, the video projections or the sound amplification and body percussion and everything, it immediately affected the way I was improvising as a dancer. Because it opens a whole new possibilities and it somehow makes you go out of the comfort zone and play with it, basically play with what the technology gives you. So the way that I will speak now about the Ritual project, which is the one that actually we were planning to have VR or virtual reality in it, is that one day we chose some of the treasury of props and instruments that Alessandro has in his house, and we chose one metal instrument, which is a squared metal piece. So Alessandro started to amplify the sounds that I was creating with my hands on the piece itself. He was using wires and amplifier. Alessandro, maybe you can explain this the technological aspect better than me. So he amplified the sounds basically that I was doing while tapping on the instrument and gliding with my nails and fingers on it. And also I was using water, drops of water to just drop on the metal piece itself. And it also created a very interesting sound. At the same time as we were playing with the instruments and with the props, we were also working on the philosophical aspect of the whole things that we were doing. So the idea about this whole thing with the Ritual started with thinking about how we can use technology to create different perceptions for the audience. And that is why I quoted the quote from Anis, from the Mill guy, who, basically we wanted to create two possibilities for the audience to watch at the same moment that we are creating. So at the beginning, I started playing with the metal plot and with all the instruments that I had and all the props that I had on stage. And then we realized that maybe all of those instruments do not have to be basically existent on stage, but I can create movement with my arms, basically a choreography that would be visible for the audience, but only with my hands, without the props. And the second version of it, which will be screened behind me on a large screen, would be the second vision of the whole performance, which is the one that I see through the smart glasses. And the smart glasses, or the monitors in the smart glasses, will project real objects on the stage, which are in real time non-existent, but I'm playing with them with my movement of my hands. So basically the audience will be able to see only me and the metal plot on stage and me moving with the hands. And then on the screen behind me, they will be able to see what I'm actually touching with my hands and what I'm moving with or playing with while I'm dancing. So this is just an idea that we started developing and thinking about how to use. The Darkness project, on the other hand, was a real trigger to use technology, and it all started. We discussed a lot about how to evoke all the possible senses of the people in the audience without them seeing much. So usually most of the performances focus on the audio, the sound that is played in the performance, and on the movement of the dancers, or if it is an actress or opera or whatever. So basically everything is based in most of the pieces on the visual aspect of the performers themselves. And we started to think, how can we play with the senses of the audience if they're not really able to see us? I will just refer here to the Schrodinger's cat experiment, which also, it's a very interesting question that rests in the head of the audience: is the cat alive or it is not? So I was wondering if the audience knows that I'm there at the beginning, but if the time passes for too long, and would they forget about my existence, or am I still there, or am I not? So we were playing with these philosophical aspects about creating the whole performance itself. And at first, the first idea came, the first question was how to actually make it possible, and how can I interact with the audience when I too cannot see in the dark? So the idea began by, we thought that maybe it could be interesting if we could use night vision glasses, so that I can move through space in a space that is complete dark, and we can play, as Annie said, to evoke other senses also, like touch, for example, or smell. And I can walk through the space with those night vision glasses, and I can touch some of the audience, or I can pop up some smell, perfume, or whatever. So that is how the idea began, to use this type of interaction and to basically evoke different feelings and different experiences in the audience there. At this moment, both of these projects are a work in progress, and we are still working on them and searching for partners to just make the whole technological aspect possible, and to, at the end, obviously, and hopefully create a final piece. But I must say that it was a very interesting and it is still a very interesting thing to be working on. And I believe that technology could be a real step up for creating art for the people. But again, I will agree with Alessandra about the danger of using the technologies only for the purpose of entertainment. in which case it will be only a commercialized show for the audience, not much of an artistic show maybe. So we're trying to just work around all of those things. Yes, that would be all, I think, unless Alessandro has to add something. And
we're also already running out of time a little bit, but it's super interesting. Thank you, Ivana and Alessandra, for your inspiring presentation. Are there any questions right now? If not, I would say that we keep them for after, like to have first Jan's presentation maybe, and then have a discussion about also the elements that Ivana mentioned during her presentation. Because if we start discussing that now, I think it will be midnight before Jan can present. Any question directly to Ivana and Alessandro on their projects? No? Then let's go to Jan and discuss after. So the last speaker of tonight is Jan Staes. He's from Belgium. He is the director of the Master of Education in Arts of the Fontys University College for Fine and Performing Arts from Tilburg, the Netherlands. But Jan is also a researcher and professor at the Royal Conservatory Antwerp in Belgium, as well as an artistic pedagogical advisor for the Academy of the Arts in Antwerp. And next to that, he's a theatre dramaturg. Now, the Master of Education in Arts students have been visiting Skopje a few years in a row when it was still possible before Corona. And it means that Jan has already been to Skopje 3 times, I think. And we hope to see him back next year. But before he is here in real life again, he will talk about artistic online creation, which we can do while we cannot travel that much. Jan, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Maaike. And I think it summons it up. I would really have liked to be now in Skopje, but from a certain reason that everybody knows at this point, it's not possible. Now, the same happened last year and the year before. So we're already almost 2 years in a situation in which if you're creating in the art or if you're studying in the art, some things are possible and sometimes you just go into quarantine. So you can't travel, you can't move. And what was for us really interesting was what could we do in creating and in teaching online through various techniques, through various media, with state-of-the-art online tools, but also with simple, let's say, everyday tools that we have. So that was a question that we had, how to teach and how to create. And for us, really important was also how to do it in co-creation as really an activity. I think you mentioned it, Anis, very nicely. You said, well, it is about participation. It's also what I get from Ivana and Alessandro's story. You want to involve your audiences as co-creators in a new setting, and that was also for us the challenge. Because if maybe you notice it also right now, we're just looking at a flat screen. And we're trying to interact, but something is missing. We're missing, for example, embodiment. We're missing being in the same space, in the same time, in the same context. Now I'll share my screen and I'll show you some of the ideas that we worked upon, and also important for me, why did we make these choices? So what's a pedagogical background to it? Also a philosophical background to it. So it was already nice to hear both previous speakers addressing both topics from an artistic point, from a pedagogical point, but also from a philosophical point. And I'll try to speed up the lecture. So normally I should end within 20 minutes. So I'll start sharing my screen. So what we did, this is a traditional model of pedagogy. And normally a teacher is really an expert in his domain, for example, in the arts, visual arts, but he also has pedagogical knowledge. Now, what's changed over the years is that you don't only need this pedagogical knowledge and this content knowledge, but also a kind of technological knowledge. Unfortunately, in Belgium and the Netherlands, and I can imagine it's also the case in Skopje, what you see sometimes is that this technological knowledge is being outsourced. So in a school, in a university, you have the IT specialists. And if a button doesn't work, then you call in the specialist. Now imagine teaching, for example, Alessandro, music, and you have no idea how to play, let's say, Si bemol. And you say every time you have to play it, wait a minute, I'll call in a specialist. I mean, that would be unacceptable. Or for example, if in dance you say, well, I know the first movement, the second movement, the third movement, but I never did the fourth. I just skipped it. So I have somebody else doing it. It's really unthinkable. But with technology, it happens. You have specialists. So for us, it was a challenge to say, well, how can we incorporate this technological knowledge within this framework of teaching so that you also feel at ease for using it? The second thing was a lot of pedagogues asked the question, but what is really teaching? When can we say we are teaching and learning? And for example, Geert Kellichtermans, a professor at the Leuven University, said, well, teaching always happens somewhere, and it happens sometime, at a particular point in time. At this moment, we are sharing this same time frame. We are not sharing the same place. And he says, well, this context, it really impacts educational practices. So the fact not being in the same place does it. Now, fortunately, like Annie said, in virtual reality, we could recreate from distance this same time and same place experience. So maybe this virtual reality will be something now, but also in future to focus upon. I also really liked the examples that you gave from the dance and the music collaboration. So you are recreating a contextual space, and it might be an interesting educational space. The third thing is you're here seeing how technology evolved throughout time from starting the Industrial Revolution, but also how our education shifted. And this educational shifted. So what you see, technology also always is ahead of education. So we always, let's say, have a feeling of we're losing space, we're losing pace. We have to catch up. So the question is how to bridge this gap between education and technology. Now, there were lots of researches being done on teachers' confidence and the use of technology. And what these researchers show is there's always a first phase, and it's called survival. So you don't feel expertise. And that's really different from what happens if you are this expert in, for example, Alessandro music, and you're an expert also in teaching, but then comes this technological phase, and you are a survivor. You're not an expert anymore. So you start feeling the loss of expertise. And it takes a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error to become to have this feeling of mastery and to have impact and to be innovative. So it takes time. We need to practice. And how can we practice? Well, there was one answer, and it was this thing. And it looks really cute. It looks like being in a Christmas tree, But this is actually a big enlargement of the virus of COVID. So it's not that cute. But what it did, it really it gave us no other possibility than to go into this experiment. And that's interesting from a researcher's point of view. Now, if you look at textbooks, and if you look at examples online, and if you read studies, then everybody says, well, it is possible. Online teaching is possible. And you always get these kinds of images. Now, I have no idea how your cultural centers, schools, and universities look like, but this was not the image. This was not a technology I had at my disposal. It more looked like this. And the only physical student I had was my cat. So this was my situation. And I thought, well, what the hell am I going to do? How can I do this? There are some interesting starting points. And one of this is Cedric Price. And he asked already in 1965, he said, well, technology can be the answer, but what is the question? So meaning, if we say we're going to use technology, when are we going to use technology? How are we going to use technology? Why are we going to use technology? And Anis, I really love the fact that you already pointed that out in your first lecture. This technology isn't just technology. You need to be aware when and how to use it. What for me was really interesting was this schematics from Puente Dura. In 2014, he came out with this model, and he says, well, you can use technology in 4 ways, and it's called the SAMR model. The first one is you can use it as substitution. For example, not giving a physical lecture, but doing it online. I'm just giving the same lecture as I would do in front of a class, but now I'm using cameras. It's just substitution. It's also what you said just earlier, playing music online. The next step, you could say, well, I use it as a kind of augmentation. And it was a beautiful example that you just gave from this dance. So by adding something, your creation becomes something more, something that you couldn't do without technology. The simplest idea is if you go into a museum, instead of having a physical tour guide, you have this black metal box and you take along your tour guide as an audio guide. That's augmentation. The third step is modification. So by using technology, you try and you are modifying the way you are working, the way you are creating, the way you are teaching. For example, what you did in this dance performance with the sound bars, I really loved it. That's an example of modification. You come up with this idea because of technology, and you are doing something that you wouldn't have done before without this technology. And then the fourth stage is redefinition. You are really going to redefine your teaching and your performing. So saying, well, technology will be the basis and will be at the verve of what I am going to do. And I only can do this because thanks to technology. And I really love these 4 steps. And I can really assure you my first 3, 4, 5 weeks doing courses online was substitution. But what I, for example, noticed, 2 hours course is not a problem in real life. 2 hours watching, looking at the screen and listening like we are doing now, I must say, I think within 20 minutes, I'll just be a wreck. It's so tiring. So imagine that you will be doing this 6-7 hours a day. So you need to think of something else. What did we do? The second thing is, we also said, well, we have this concept here at Tilburg University of the teaching artist. So in the first place, you are an artist who is teaching something. And that's a different point of view than most teachers have. Most teacher training courses will say you're a teacher and you're teaching a subject, for example, biology. We say, no, the first thing you do is you teach through the arts. You not only are going to teach in the arts, about the arts, but also through the arts. So your artistic presence is really the basic of your teaching. But how do you do this online? How can you create something online and through this artistic creation also teach something? It means the teacher-student relationship will shift again. And I have here 4 different topics. I can give you every text and reference if you would like to afterwards. Gumbrecht says, well, it's really important in the arts to have this production of presence. You have to be aware that you're creating at this moment. And if you're doing the same piece over tomorrow, you won't be doing the same thing because you're so aware of the presence of that present presentation. It's the same for teaching. If I give this lecture now or tomorrow morning, it will differ. The second really interesting thing is what Foucault says, heterotopical spaces. And what's a heterotopical space? He calls it an in-between space. The easiest example is a museum or a theater. If I am performing Shakespeare in a theater this evening, then I'm recreating something of the past to give meaning to the present and the future. So art always, if you look at a painting, you are not just looking at an object from the past, but you are making sense of it right now. So that's this heterotopical space. It's an in-between world. Now that also relates to what Anaïs was saying. Virtual reality for me is also this heterotopical space, this in-between world. The third really interesting concept is from Rancière. He's called it emancipated spectatorship. With technology, you are not an audience, you are not a public. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make connection, like in real life. And this connection means that I have to look at you not just as somebody who is listening and watching, but I want you to interfere, to participate. For example, through questions and answers after a presentation. So I want to emancipate you. You're not a spectator, you are, or you become, in the best case, a co-creator. And I think this is also what I just heard in the former lecture, creating something in the public space with this audience, the audience become part of the performance. They're not a passive audience anymore. They are really elements of co-creation, with whom I think you interact as a dancer and as a musician. And that's interesting also, how to recreate it online. And the last thing, I'm doing a lot of research at this moment about embodied learning. 3 years ago, it was really difficult for me to explain what embodied learning was and how important the actual physical body in a space was for learning. At this point, I have no trouble anymore explaining it, because I say, well, don't you miss the physical body in the learning space? Everybody nods and said, yeah, I would rather have been with you in the same room, in the same classroom. And this embodiment is really important. It is actually this full emergence of every sense. And that's why I asked the question before to you, Anaïs, of isn't it interesting that we combine this physical world with this virtual world? Coming to this, it means that the relation teacher-student, which is sometimes a monologue, a sending situation, becomes a dialogue. And that's a shift. And how to do this online, because my first lessons reshifted to a monologue, like now, actually. And how can I create it into a dialogue? How do we do this? We asked two artists to help us in this. Elke Tuin, who is a visual artist, and Bruno Herseel, who is a performing artist and a philosopher. And we said, well, we want to do something online in co-creation. Is it possible? Can we co-create online? And can we do it, really important, with simple use of basic technology, something that lots of people have at their disposal in their homes, using simple tools like Zoom. So we were talking about virtual reality. This is actually what we did is really, let's say, low technological based. But what was interesting was some of the starting points. For example, this quotation by Sal Lewitt, we have to play. So playfulness is really important, for example. Also, another thing that we started from was, I don't know if you noticed these lists of verbs by the visual artist Richard Serra. This is a list of verbs, and he gives it to you and I said, well, pick a few and then let's create something from these words. It can be music, it can be theater, it can be dance, it can be visual arts, it can be a mixture, a combination of everything. So it's actually a kind of starting point. And because it are verbs, it starts from action. If it would be nouns, like a house, then it's statical. But because it is a verb, it calls for action. We also saw very different ideas and very different examples within existing artworks. For example, Ana Mendieta, who does wonderful online filming and performance, or the Belgian artist Francis Ali, who films his performances here. It's an ice block that he pushes on towards Mexico City in the streets. And these video performance were really inspiring. Out of all these concepts, we created these concepts: body, environment, focus, impulse, and action. And these were the words that we say, well, we want to co-create something online, offline, together. There was a lot of discussion online. How can we do it? How can we put everything together into a new form? What we also did is we had these 5 terms: actions, materials, patterns, landscapes, and body. And we asked all the participants, just fill in what are your associate words with it. What would you want to do with it? So everybody started to talk about their ideas of a small creation, a small performance. In came more examples. For example, Richard Long, land art. Could it be visual? Could it be theater? Could it be dance? And what we also did was adding a 6th word, namely connection. How can we make something that connects us? How can we make something that is co-creative and connected in a way that everybody can work on it at home, in their environment, put it together and make it into one big new art piece that only exists on the net, on the internet. I'm going to show you a short piece of the results. So what you are seeing is a compilation of video fragments. So everybody had an idea, a performance, put it on camera using smartphones, putting it into a central database, and we created a loop of a few minutes out of all these different images. So you are now looking at images from all the participants being put together in this loop. The actual work wasn't just this video performance, but it was also the dialogue and the discussion. What are we going to create together? How can we do it using the actual physical world, but also how can we do it online? How can we show it? How can we do it low tech so everybody can participate also? I'll send you the link. I'll send it to Yasmina to share with everyone of the actual compilation. What was also nice, and it was the last thing, after we did this performance and we'll put it online, one of the art centers here in Tilburg, they have a really big screen outside of their theater where they normally project commercial things of the coming performances. And we managed to put also this loop, this video loop, on the big screen. So what had to be something only existing online also turned out to be something that actually had a physical form in the Tilburg streets. That's my short story.
Thank you so much, Jan. I think it's a really inspiring story as well, to see how with very simple means like mobile phones, you can make something that is then being projected in the middle of town on the facade of a theater. I am seeing a few questions. First, I'm giving the floor to Magdalena, and then Anis will be next. Magdalena. Magdalena, can you unmute? No? Okay, then I will first give the floor to Anis, and if Magdalena wishes, she can make herself known later. Anis.
First of all, thanks both to Professor Jan and Alessandro as well with Ivana for the beautiful insights and amazing presentations. I will give my question first to Alessandro and Ivana, and then in the same time to Professor Jan. It will be in line with the philosophical approach to virtual reality. To Ivana and Alessandro, especially, again, congratulations for all of your amazing work. I was caught especially by the dark project because it emphasizes the meaning of our life in general. And I wanted again to eventually explain why you see the risk of potential misuse of this technology when, as Meister Eckhart stated, that the world itself is one huge void, and we are here to give meaning to this void. And Martin Heidegger will speculate that the meaning that we are giving to this void of existence is by interaction with objects, from where we eventually gain or give essence to them. It means that the chair becomes a chair because we choose to sit on it, or the horse has its horseness when we are riding it. So virtual reality here can just augment the possibilities of interaction with the physical world, let's say in both the micro and microcosm, when we see various applications within the CERN Institute done with the boson particle, where virtual reality is used to make virtual interactive simulations and enable us to take part in what's happening in higher dimensions, explore surfaces on different planets without the necessity to be transported there physically. So I believe that, or better, you can answer. Eventually, virtual worlds, and one Professor Jan stated as middle worlds, can help us to survive maybe in our existence as an opposite to the threat. And okay, here we will always have both the dystopian and utopian visions of whatever it's new out there. But I wanted to ask you whether the risk of the misuse is greater than the opportunity of surviving eventually. And then to Professor Jan, my question would be, can we use these middle worlds or middle realities to unify our consciousness, to fill the gaps of the experiences we have in the real world, and whether this unification can bring us to eventually transcendence of intelligence, amplification or augmentation of our intelligence as a species, or eventually to destruction. Okay.
Thanks, Anis. Over to Ivana and Alessandro for their thoughts.
About the virtual worlds, the goal, the desire is permit to the audience open a new horizon, a possibility to go beyond beyond the normal vision of the life, beyond the normal perspective, and beyond our normal, normal brain ways. And with the virtual reality, we can open to new worlds, new possibility of thoughts. This is my ambition. And I think it's possible open a new feeling, or a mix of feeling, and create a theater of feeling, like in el teatro de los sentidos, open a new possibility of mix of this sensation, of this feeling. This is my idea, my desire, and I don't know if Ivana can help me.
Yes. For me, Anis, I think that you have answered the question while you were asking it, in terms of the idea is what you make of it. And I think that here, the concern does not apply only to the usage of technology when creating art, but also to the creation of art itself. In this case, it is with technology, but it is basically in general. What is the concept behind, and what lies in the back of your mind when you do something? And that is why, I mean, I had this discussion with a friend lately, and we were discussing about who can judge art and how can you judge art. And how can you say, for example, if we have two people, one of which is well educated, went to a process of universities, and he's an artist or a doctor in art and whatever, and another one who is just an artist at his home, and he just paints the whole day, and both of them paint. One has finished like university and has learned through the years how to apply techniques and technology maybe to create that art, and the other one only paints in his room with his I don't know, pencil. And what is art? Who is doing the bigger art in this picture? And how can you judge? And can you judge? So the thing is that there is no obvious answer to that question. And also you cannot neglect that someone has spent his entire life to learn and to dive deeply into the whole philosophy of the existence of the world, of the all ideas and brainstormings, you know. So you cannot neglect all of that as an added value when creating art. But also the other person who just sits in his room and just draws every day only from the depths from his heart and from what he feels inside, it's also art for me, you know. So I think that the biggest concern is here with the commercialization of things, when people only create in terms of marketing, in terms of show, in terms of commercialization of things without deeper context, without the creation of deeper context, which unfortunately sells more nowadays because people are tired and they would rather see a show that it's happy and colorful or something that will entertain them than actually be involved into something that would evoke and inspire thoughtfulness and brainstorming and things like that. So yes, I think the biggest concern is how to help art and an artistic approach and creating based on a deeper context alive. How to keep that alive? How to educate the audience more, and how to bring the audience closer to that, and not only to commercial things, which is art in another level, in a marketing level. It is also art. If you ask me what happens in the world nowadays.
Yeah.
I think this is a natural moment for Jan to step in, especially with how to educate the audience. So
yeah, and it is about this new spectatorship, I think. You ask for philosophers. I have 5, but I'll put it very shortly. The first one is Walter Benjamin from the 1930s, who asked himself, is a picture of a painting still an artwork? Doesn't that picture loses the aura, what he called, of the artwork, the aura of the painting that you can't reproduce in a picture? So the question nowadays with virtual reality is not, for me, is it art? The question is, when do we define it as being artistic, thus an artwork? So I want to shift from what is to when is it? And it's more interesting for me. It also relates what you said about, it is about activity. It's about connection. It is about, it is not statical. That's one. The second one is Jacques Derrida, French philosopher. And he talks about the agency of language. So he says, well, everybody has his own language. And the trouble is, if we talk to each other, if we go into a dialogue, we have to try to understand each other, not just the English words like now, but also the way I am saying it, my gestures, my embodiment, my grammar, everything. Me being Belgian versus you being Macedonian. So there's a difference. So we both have our agency. And it's not a game about trying to convince you to recreate and to copy my language. The game is, if you react, that I can see, hey, what's in it for me? What does this say about my agency of language? And maybe I can shift something because I thought it was interesting what you did. So it's about evolution, not about copying. I see now in the virtual world is about evolution. 20 years ago, it was about copying. It was about, I have made something, taking a picture and digitalizing it. At this point, I'm digitally creating. It's something completely different. So the agency of the artwork changes. So for me, a basic topic is, when are we talking about virtual and what is real? For me, a lot of things in the virtual world are real things. So let's look for that language. That's the second thing. Third one is Martin Buber, going back also to the 1920s, 30s. And he said, well, you can have an I-it relationship to things or an I-you relationship. I can now say you are listening to me. What I just did, you are an audience. I made you into an it relationship that I can control. It's what also regimes do, the people. It's not about humans anymore, it is the people. So it's an I-it relationship. I thought the virtual reality was an I-it relationship, but it isn't. It also can be an I-you relationship. But then I need something really important, namely another human being. Maybe in 20 years' time, with artificial intelligence, I will reconsider and I say, well, a computer can also be a you. But this virtual reality, this virtual space in which we create, I can meet actual people through avatars, through technology, but I still meet people. So for me, yes, it closes the gap between this utopia and dystopia. And then the last one is Emmanuel Levinas, also a French philosopher. And he goes further than Buber, and he says, well, I can only know myself through contact with the other. So I need you to be conscious of myself. The fact that you asked a question makes me think of an answer. And this answer would not exist if you hadn't asked that question. It's the same into this virtual reality. By meeting people in a virtual reality, by seeing new experiences. For example, if Ivana performs in the virtual reality, the laws of physics don't apply anymore. At that point, I can only know myself through looking at her performing, and it says also something about me and my experience. But again, I need a human being in this space. So to sum it up, I really think virtual reality has the potential to connect and to go beyond the utopia-dystopia discussion. But what I really need is human interaction at this point. just playing an online video against a computer won't do it. Playing a massive online game with other people in a video with a computer will do it, because I have the sense of this human interaction through the virtual world. And maybe, and I'm looking forward to people like you who are constantly developing this virtual space. Maybe in 10 years' time, I will say it also can happen without human interaction. But at this point, I like the humanity at it. Sorry for the long answer.
Thank you very much for all of you three for the great answers. Before we have full immersive VR, I hope I have the opportunity to meet you in person. And here is an official invitation from all of us to come to our country as soon as we have a safe moment to do so. Thank you very much again.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it, and I will say more. Normally, I will come with 50 of my students in May. So let's do this.
Thank you.
You're always almost taking over my role as a moderator to wrap up the discussion. Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Ivana. Yeah?
One question, yes, which is not related only to arts, but it just popped up in my head while Anis was speaking, and I was wondering if ever virtual reality has been used in psychotherapy or medicine, or hypnosis even maybe. I was really interested to hear if something like that happens in the world.
Okay, this is definitely a very different discussion. Maybe
I can say it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some examples of it, so it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Because maybe.
Yes, just wanted to know if it is possible, because it somehow came naturally to see that this is a creation of a whole new world through the smart glasses. And I would not say that it is not creative, basically, to use it in medicine, and it is not a usage of creative way of implementation of technology to work with people's minds. So that is why I asked the question. So if not, I hope that it will happen.
I've seen several applications I can share with you for countering different phobia through virtual reality, where you can have photorealistic representation of simulated environment where different profiles or different states of human beingness can react differently. So it can help us to overcome certain fears by repeating a scenario or our experience within a virtual world, which has the necessary level of realistic representation of that scenario. So after you repeat it several times, eventually you will have at the end the outcome of overcoming certain fear, as the famous old wisdom says, do what you fear, it will disappear. So being aware of the eliminated risks that virtual reality can offer us, we can try to reconstruct a real world situation where eventually we wouldn't be able to embrace certain interaction because of past trauma inherited or whatever. And the device I'm developing within the sensing technology of generating smell and augmenting smell through virtual reality eventually can also be used as a platform for aromatherapy application using VR. So yeah, you give me a beautiful idea and inspiration where I can proceed eventually. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Center Jadro is planning to continue with discussions about the use of technology in post-COVID situations. So maybe this is something that Jadro can integrate in its program as a next theme. So definitely something to take note of. I think for now it's really time to wrap up the discussion. It's already 9:20 and I've been staring at my screen for 2 hours and 20 minutes without being bored a single second. So thank you all for enabling that. I really learned a lot. I hope you all also enjoyed the discussions. When I said it in my introduction that this time we were going to take it to the next level, I didn't know that we would end up with such a philosophical approach to the team, but I think it was very useful. So thank you all for the discussion. I hope maybe Anis, you were still going to share your projects in the chat, so you can do it right now. If not, we'll make sure that we circulate it or put it elsewhere. Thank you very much and hope to see you at one of the next events or in real life.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Saul.
Thank you. Thank you for the inspiring and lovely presentation, and looking forward to 2022, where we continue this exchange and collaboration with new topics and lectures and new, more inspiring case study projects in art education, but also other spheres and possibilities of application. Thank you so much.
Thank you for me too.